Alright, so this is going to be episode 5 to UA Year 1. I know that I haven't done this video or this series in a long time. It's just that I've been caught up with a lot of different what ifs, especially with the fact that I'm trying to up my quality. So this was a kind of original project that I had with the community, or at least my fans, to make this kind of series. But like I said before, I had to put on the side because of the other what ifs that I've been doing with more editing. So I'm not going to edit this kind of series too much. And if you are a subscriber from, my latest video with the Shield Hero, I'm going to say this right now. My other videos are not going to be scripted. I'm only scripting the Shield Hero what ifs because there's just so much that happens in the series and so much freedom within that series that I kind of need to script it a bit. In the future, I might not if I have a good handle on how I should build the world and things like that. So yeah, this is going to be episode 5, like I said before. And if you haven't seen the other episodes, I'll link the playlist in the description, and you could go watch the previous episodes. So yeah. So in this episode, this is basically going to go over the next day from the last episode. So yeah. So Apollo and the rest of the class would walk into the classroom, and Pit Sensei would have an announcement for them. Everyone would be kind of shocked since it is the first, I believe it's like within the same week. So it's only been around 5 days, I think, since, or not 5, I believe. Yeah, it should be the 4th day. So so everyone would be shocked, and he would announce that everyone is to create a hero costume for themselves. So everyone's very excited since it is the kind of 3rd generation, like I said before. There's only been one generation of heroes, that being Pit's generation. So he tells everyone to get a piece of paper and to kind of sketch out the design, what they want, and extra details that the manufacturer should know. So Apollo never really gave it too much thought on his costume, since he's always been someone that could really adapt to most situations because of his quirk, and he never thought of anything really too flashy. So he obviously thinks that he needs to have a lot of skin exposed so that he could use his quirk more often and in better places. So what Apollo does is he gets like a kind of skin tight kind of outfit for his kind of chest and kind of lower body, but not really on his arms, because so they would have enough exposure for his arms to kind of create things. But other than that, he actually does get a robe, right? And the reason why he gets a robe is because it's to cover his arms so that people can't really see what is drawing on his arms or what's being manifested, but at the same time giving him the freedom to take his arms out of the cloak, so he's able to actually launch his attacks or use his arms pretty freely. So that's the reason why he has that kind of cloak. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, then you could go and check out. I got this idea from this anime called Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple, I believe it's called, with the character named Hermit. So you could look that up if you want a kind of good idea. I might put it on screen if I have the chance. But yeah, also I forgot to mention this before, but I'm going to update this kind of photo or this kind of image of Apollo and things like that, because if you guys have been following me for a bit, I'm doing like digital art. So I'm gonna try to update this cover photo or cover drawing, since this was a time where I just only did traditional art. But yeah, with that being said, let's get back into the story. So let's go over the kind of other characters or the other students in class 1E to see what else they would do. So let's go over the kind of main people in the inner circle, or the friend circle, I guess. So Athena, Hers is a little bit different since she basically consumes light and then shoots it back out as darkness. So her hand would have a kind of a lens on it, similar to that of a magnifying glass, so that it focuses in the light into her hand more easily, and she'd be able to kind of more easily get light from the sun since it'd be more focused. And as for her kind of overall design, I think it'd be similar to that of kind of M. Bison, if you got from like Street Fighter, something similar to that kind of military kind of form. I really like that design. But yeah, as for the other students, they are not my own OCs, so I don't really know how their kind of costume would look like, because a lot of the kind of OCs don't have that kind of details within them. So I'm gonna kind of not go over them right now. Later on in the next video or the next episode, or even like a side video, I might kind of talk about it a bit and go over their costume, so it won't be in like an actual full episode, so you guys can either skip that if you're not interested, or you could watch that and then just appreciate the kind of other episodes that have more content within them. After everyone got their hero costumes, it went back to training. So like last time, Pit Sensei would go around looking at the different kind of students and what they're trying to do. He would give them the same advice as last time, but try to kind of see their progress. So then he gets to Apollo, and he's still struggling with trying to manifest flames using his drawings. So Pit sees this, and Apollo's having more trouble than most of the other students, because they're just trying to know, they're going into kind of semi-unknown territories, while with Apollo, it's kind of totally totally unknown, because he hasn't really drawn things that are not, solid or physical, while everyone is just doing a kind of part of their quirk that is kind of known, but just testing out new limits. So Pit goes up to Apollo and basically tells him, hey Apollo, if you're having so much trouble with fire, how about you try something in the opposite direction? And what I mean by that is ice. Like the number one hero, Frostbite. You know how he always likes to use ice to defeat his enemies. And this is where Apollo's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, let me try to do that. It seems like you don't really care about the number one hero that much, Pit Sensei. And he's like, yeah, well, he's not really too impressive to me. And Apollo's like shocked by this. He's like, really? Like, everyone likes him. And Pit's like, yeah, I know, but I knew the guy way back, and to see him from his humble beginnings gives you a real perspective on things. And Apollo's like, really? What do you mean by that? And he's like, yeah, I knew the guy in high school. And this is where Apollo's really interested, like, oh, could you tell me more? I really want to hear about this. He's like, all right, sure. So when we were back in high school, he was really a kind of ice king, and not really, no pun intended, but he was really like that. He was very cold and distant, but at the same time, he wasn't really malicious about it. He just didn't really talk to people. And when people tried to, people would be surprised how much, approachable he was. And I guess people really liked that. So I always thought he was kind of lazy, but when I saw him become a hero, I kind of changed my mind a bit. But even then, he was kind of, how would you say, he was slow at catching on, I would say. So he would take out, enemies or villains pretty easily, and pretty one-sided fights would happen nearly all the time whenever people would go against, Frostbite. He would take them out so easily that he seemed somewhat sad, but I don't think it was because of the fight. I think he was just sad that there was villains, strangely enough. I think he really wanted them to be good people, but they just chose a different path in life. But the strangest part is that the guy didn't even know he was the number one hero until someone told him. And Apollo's like, what? What are you talking about? How is that even possible? He's like, yeah. And one day I went up to the guy and asked him, like, well, how does it feel to be the number one hero? And he just looked around and said, are you talking to me? And this is when I found out that he didn't even know. He said he was just so focused on taking out villains that he wasn't really paying attention to that. And for some reason, this was really popular with people. People really liked his personality. And that's really all I really know about him. I don't really talk to him that much. And Paul's like, wow, this guy, he's thinking about how Frostbite was just that he didn't even care about the fame. All he cared about was just doing a good job as a hero. And this is really inspiring to Apollo at this point. So Apollo tries to make ice, and he starts with kind of making some ice cubes, since that's kind of easier to do than just kind of forming ice all by itself. So he draws up the sketch, and he's actually able to make the ice, since it is a physical kind of thing. That's a lot easier than to make the fire. So he tries to make more and more ice, and he's actually able to shoot it out almost like a kind of icicle in the kind of way. So at this point, he's like, okay, a really big problem I have with making fire is that it kind of heats me up and kind of drains my stamina a bit because of it. So he tries to make ice around him while making the fire to kind of cool him down, similar to how Todoroki does when he overheats or gets frostbite, where he has to, heat himself up. He has the kind of duality that he has to do. So when he tries this, he's actually able to make bigger flames, not to the point where he's able to shoot them out, but he is making progress. So after this, we would go to lunch, and this is where Apollo and his friend group, that being Athena, Atlas, Derek, and I believe his name was Mari, I think. But yeah, so Athena is talking to Apollo, and she asks him, like, so what should we do? Should we go and try to level up by ourselves in terms of like going up the school rankings, or should we try to bring our entire kind of class with us? And this is where Apollo's like, well, I don't know, it'd be easier for us to get to the higher rankings by ourselves, since it'd be a lot faster, but at the same time it might be easier to do a kind of team strategy. So it's kind of hard to say this, because at first, because I'm pretty sure I asked this question before in the previous episodes, and Apollo said he would, but right now he's kind of second guessing himself. He's like, well, let's try to really level up for ourselves first through training, and then we could tell if we could go by ourselves, because we don't really know the other classes too well. So they would have their lunch, and it would get to the end of the school day, and they would go to their kind of club, their power leveling club. So it would be more training, but this time using other people's quirks in tandem to kind of help each other. So the basic training goes like this, right? So Apollo is doing his kind of normal training, but under some specific kind of circumstances, that being with Ryu, I believe his name was Ryu Mead, and his ability Freeze, which is able to triple the gravity of someone. So he's basically using this to improve his strength dramatically, since it's using gravity. So he's doing that to kind of build up kind of muscle and kind of do a lot more strength training through that. But that's not the only thing that's happening. At the same time, this is where Atlas is actually using his quirk to actually nerf kind of Apollo at this point, to kind of build him up as a resistance to this kind of attack. But not even that only. Athena is actually buffing Atlas at this point to improve his overall nerfing abilities, if you know what I mean. If you've seen the previous episodes, you know what quirks they have. So this is what he's kind of doing. So Atlas is at the point where he could barely even move in this kind of environment, but it is helping him try to go and pass his limits through this kind of technique. So eventually they're all kind of getting their own training done through this kind of system, basically testing the limits of their quirk through this. So after this is where Apollo actually goes, and he's about to go home, and he sees like these two kids bullying and going against this one kid, and he's about to step in, but this is where someone else actually steps in. It was actually the security of the school, and Apollo's looking at this, and he sees that this security is wearing some weird kind of outfit. He's wearing this kind of suit of armor and this kind of large sword. And it turns out Apollo finally realizes this, that he's actually the number 8 hero, King. So he kind of overhears what they're kind of talking about. And the basic conversation goes like this: do you kids have no honor? A 2 versus 1 fight seems unfair. And the kids basically look behind them, and they see this kind of tall and kind of intimidating figure in the suit of armor. So they kind of leave and kind of run away. This is where Arthur basically, or not Arthur, King, but his real name is Arthur, basically tells him or asks the kid, are you okay? If they ever go after you again, just come to me. And Apollo's just looking at this and he's like, wow, I didn't know we had the number 8 hero with us. That's really cool, right? So he goes up to Arthur and asks for an autograph because he is a number 1. He's not the number 1 hero, but he is in the top 10. And pretty soon I'll make the top 10, heroes in UA Year 1. Sometime soon, I don't know when. Don't quote me on that. I know I asked it before, but yeah. So he actually gets an autograph from Arthur, since Arthur is very chivalrous, because he is a knight and he has that kind of persona. So Apollo's walking home, and he kind of gets hungry. So he goes to this local convenience store that's nearby to get something real quick. So he gets what he wants, and he's standing in line. This is where he's standing in line, and this is where the store actually is attempted to get robbed. A villain's actually threatening the owner to rob, the place, or else he's gonna take the owner's life. I mean, this villain's name is actually Absorber. His basic powers is that he's able to absorb materials, and he's able to shape his hands in certain, different ways after absorbing that certain material. Or not just his hands, but his overall kind of body. So yeah, but there's someone in front that's just not moving out of Absorber's way, and at this point he's kind of absorbed some of the floor to make him kind of made out of concrete and some metal. So he's telling this guy hey, do you have a death wish? Why aren't you moving? And this guy's a little bit around the same height as him, I believe. So it's not like he's intimidated by his size alone, but this guy that's in front of him is wearing this kind of trench coat covering most of him. So when he turns around, what happens is that the person in front of him basically gets Absorber by the neck and lifts him up. This is where Absorber tries to basically use his body to kind of morph out of it, which he successfully does, but he takes off the trench coat that was covering him by trying to slash him. What's revealed is the number 1 hero, Frostbite. And at this point, Azorba notices that it's Frostbite, and he's kind of scared, like, whoa, because he didn't know that, someone like Frostbite would be around here since he's the #1 hero. And what happens is that Frostbite's not really saying anything to him, but instead just goes and rushes towards him. Azorba's not really prepared for this, but he tries to defend anyways, using his kind of body to shape himself into kind of spikes. So what happens is that instead of going directly at him, this is when Frostbite actually jumps to the side and basically puts his kind of hand to his mouth, almost like or his fist to his mouth. And what he does is he makes basically icicle shots using his hand to form the shape of an icicle and kind of shooting it out, kind of like a blow dart or something to that effect. So this hits him in the shoulder and he's kind of hurt pretty badly. So after that, this is where Azorba actually takes a person hostage. So what after this happens, this is where Azorba tells Frostbite, like, don't get any closer or I'm gonna kill this girl, because it'd be like this kind of woman that's there. So what happens is that at this point Frostbite's like, right, he's kind of not really saying much, but he seems somewhat sad that this would happen. So he basically, before giving anyone any warning, he basically blows as hard as he can, because if you remember, his power is Frost Breath. So he blows as hard as he can and he actually freezes Azorba. But the thing was that his breath was so focused that it didn't even touch the woman or really anything else in the store. So eventually authorities come and they take the villain away. Apollo's like, whoa, what just happened? And he goes up to Frostbite and he asks him, like, how'd you do that? And he's like, oh, I just used my quirk. And Apollo's like, no, like, how'd you get only the villain and not, the girl that was right next to him? And this is where this is where Frostbite would notice Apollo's uniform and notice from UA. And he tells him, like, oh, I see that you're trying to be a hero. And he actually smiles, which is not really characteristic of Frostbite, and not many people have seen Frostbite, actually smile. So it's a very rare occurrence. And when it happens, it kind of blows up on like social media and things like that, because how rarely it happens. So Apollo's really excited, and this is where Frostbite gets close to him, and he's like, you know what, I'll tell you the #1 thing you gotta know as a hero. And this is where Apollo's like, yeah, what is it? And Apollo's like, the #1 factor is quirk control. And Apollo's like, what? Yeah, and he's like, yes. The reason why I was able to do all I did is because I have such a high level of quirk control that I could specifically choose who to freeze, even though my quirk is basically more of an area effect. And this is when Apollo's remembering all his different moves that he did with the kind of icicles that he was able to focus and shoot down people, as well as being able to just focus his breath on someone. And Apollo's just amazed by this, and he asks, can I get your autograph? So another dream of Apollo is to get, the autographs of all top 10 heroes. And this is where Frostbite's like, oh, sure, why not? And he gets his autograph, and Apollo goes home. And while this is happening, Frostbite's getting interviewed by, the press that's there. And they're asking him, like, oh, why were you here? And Frostbite's like, oh, I was just hungry. And the reporter's like, oh, is that really? Right. He's like, yeah, I was just hungry, and I just came down here. And, people really like this kind of side of him to make him seem like a normal person. and this kind of story kind of blows up in their kind of universe on social media and things like that because of this kind of celebrity just kind of saying this. Because at this point, a lot of the heroes are still considered celebrities or something to that effect. So yeah, this is going to be the end of the episode. I hope you liked it. I'm not sure how long or how consistent I'm going to make these videos. I just know that I'm not gonna really do too much editing for these type of videos. So yeah, with that being said, it's gonna be another video. So yeah.